This report focuses on several telephone conversations between Russian Defense Minister Shoigu and his Western counterparts, and the absurd claims that Ukraine was preparing a dirty false flag bombardment against Russia to force Ukraine to make concessions and intimidate NATO. On the battlefield, Ukrainian forces continued offensive operations in northeastern Ukraine, and Russian forces set conditions for a withdrawal from Kherson. These developments are briefly summarized and will be discussed in more detail tomorrow. Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu likely sought to slow or suspend Western military assistance to Ukraine and possibly weaken the NATO alliance by making fear-mongering phone calls to several defense ministers on October 23. Shoigu made separate phone calls to his counterparts in France, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States on October 23, claiming that Ukraine was preparing a false flag attack that would use a dirty bomb to accuse Russia of using weapons of mass destruction. One Russian state media disseminated this false and ridiculous claim. To Russian Defense Ministry reports. There are slight differences in the Russian Defense Ministry reports on the talks. For example, it states that in the telephone conversation with his French counterpart, Shoigu spoke of an alleged steady tendency toward further, uncontrolled escalation in Ukraine. That in his conversations with the United Kingdom, France, and Turkey, he discussed the situation in Ukraine and made false claims that Ukraine was preparing to use a dirty bomb. And that in his conversation with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, he merely discussed the situation in Ukraine without mentioning a dirty bomb. Shoigu last spoke with Defense Secretary Austin on October 21. Representatives of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine categorically rejected and condemned Shoigu's false claims, and U.S. Defense Secretary Austin called his British counterpart, Ben Wallace, after speaking with Shoigu. Three France and Turkey have not yet issued official statements. It is unlikely that the Kremlin is preparing for a nuclear attack with a false flag dirty bomb. Shoigu's claims are a continuation of a long-running Russian information campaign. The Kremlin has repeatedly claimed since the early days of its invasion of Ukraine in February that Western states were assisting Ukraine in carrying out a false flag attack with weapons of mass destruction. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed it had information that the United States was preparing provocations to accuse Russian forces of using chemical, biological, or tactical nuclear weapons. Ford Wheeler claimed in his February 24th invasion speech that Ukraine was preparing for a nuclear attack against Russia, and Russian state-run disinformation channels repeatedly claimed that Western states were supporting the development of nuclear weapons in Ukraine and planning false flag attacks. 5 Shoigu's claims are also unlikely to apply to Russian preparations for the use of non-strategic nuclear weapons in Ukraine. ICE stated as early as September 30th, ICE cannot predict when Putin will decide to use nuclear weapons. Such a decision would be personal in nature, but Putin's stated red lines for the use of nuclear weapons have already been crossed several times in this war without any Russian nuclear escalation. 6 According to the official Russian nuclear doctrine, Russia does not need another event to justify the use of nuclear weapons. 7 On the other hand, Ukraine does not appear to be on the verge of crossing a new Russian red line that might prompt Putin to use strategic nuclear weapons against it at this time, other than from the Institute for the Study of War and A's Critical Threats Project 2022. It is therefore unlikely that Shoigu's remarks would herald a nuclear terrorist attack on one or more major Ukrainian population centers or critical infrastructure to force Ukraine to surrender or to cause a Western cessation to Ukraine. It is highly unlikely that such attacks would force Ukraine or the West to surrender, as the Ukrainian government and people have repeatedly shown their willingness to keep fighting, and it would be very difficult for the West to simply capitulate in the face of such horrific acts, as such a surrender would set a precedent.